Hello, I'm Kate Thomas, and this is At Home Radio, a podcast about feeling at home where we are, whether in our own space or out in the world. We're continuing our conversation with members of the League of Women Voters of Hudson. Today, let's get down to basics. Why vote? To answer that question, I'd like to welcome Cynthia Peeples, a board member of the League of Women Voters of Hudson, and her daughter, Aiyanah, an incoming freshman at Columbia University. Welcome, both of you. So excited about having you on. Aiyanah, congratulations on embarking on your college career.
Thank you.
So I understand you'll be attending classes virtually this fall. Does that feel pretty good to you, or were you kind of disappointed?
Well, I mean, in terms of public safety, I'm glad that if it's not safe to be on campus, then it's not safe to be on campus. I mean, I would rather have gone, but if it's for the sake of making sure people don't get sick, then I'll deal with it.
Absolutely. And there's time. You have 4 years to really be there and be, and be safe while you're there. Okay. So, and these are big changes for the whole family, isn't it? Anyway, Cynthia, why don't you be the first to tackle the why vote question?
Sure. Well, thank you for having us on, and I love the idea of bringing my daughter on here as well, so we can kind of tag team these questions. So again, thank you for hosting. The big question right now: why should I or why should you vote? And really, it's a layered question, and I'd say immediately off the bat, this country, it functions as a representative democracy. And, essentially that means that we have the awesome power and civic responsibility to collectively decide who will best represent our needs at the 3 different levels of government. And when I say levels of government, I mean the local, national, and state levels. And who is going to responsibly advocate for, my family, your family, our community, our workforce, the state, and the nation as a whole. And that is an incredible responsibility that we should all take very seriously. And it's really a luxury, because if you look around the world, there are really only, I want to say 167 countries that really have a democracy where they can decide who is going to be representing them and making these micro and macro decisions that impact them on a daily, monthly, and annual basis. So we should all really onboard that responsibility. Mm-hmm. And really right now, especially with COVID-19, how that has really run a diagnostic die through every single layer of our government and exposed and revealed in broad daylight for everyone all of these systemic and institutional inequities and really failures that have been plaguing our country and overlooked for far too long. So it's really incumbent on...
Going on for a long time. Yes.
Right. None of these issues are new. They're systemic. They've been here for centuries, if you will. But really right now, with this election sitting in our laps, we really have an opportunity to fully address these issues by putting people in these seats that we feel will best represent what the issues are and be able to affect and actuate some change. Mm-hmm. And looking at the three layers of government, stepping back, when people think of an election, immediately, many people, they'll think of, presidential, the general election. And, they use whomever is running at the top of the ballot to determine if they even want to vote. Oh, I don't like my choices, for the White House. I'm not going to vote. It's the lesser of two evils. Well, I mean, you really need to step back from that, because it's really the down ballot that impacts your life and the life of your family and the life of your community. And when I say down ballot, I'm talking about those local elections. I'm talking about the state elections, and I'm talking about, Congress, in the national election. Those are the ones that we really, really need to pay attention to. Our state senators, our national senators, what is it that they're doing? And, looking locally, that our council people, our school board members, the ones that are affecting, the funding at our schools, our food policies at our schools, looking at this technology and this broadband gap that exists right now that is impacting whether my daughter or her peers or the kids in Akron public schools, if they can even complete their homework because they don't have Wi-Fi access, and how is that equitable as far as looking at education? Right. Addressing these food deserts, talking about COVID-19 and these households and their access to food on top of having the funds to even pay for food. I mean, these are things that our local officials address on a daily basis. Access to affordable housing. What do the housing zoning restrictions look like in your own community? Do you have affordable housing in your own community? Whether it's Hudson, whether it's Twinsburg, Macedonia, Akron, Cuyahoga Falls, what does that look like? In Hudson, we have the luxury of having this high-performing, high-achieving school district where you step outside of our community and, our neighboring districts, do they operate at the same levels? Why do they or why do they not? Is it because of funding? And is that equitable? Don't we want fair and equal education opportunities for all of our kids? Should their zip code be determining what kind of education that they have and where that education is going to take them? And that spills into the school to prison pipeline discussion and looking at criminal justice. And again, this goes back to our local officials. Who are we putting in positions of law enforcement? Looking at our chief of police, looking at our sheriff. These are people that we put into office by electing them, and that's just locally. And then we move on to the state, and we look at our leaders in the state house. What are they doing? On a statewide effort to address these food deserts. Looking at the Department of Education, the Department of Labor, Workforce Development. How are our representatives, our senators? How are they playing into that?
Yes, and that's one of the things that the League of Women Voters does, is put those things on the vote411.org, right? A lot of descriptions in the candidates' own words about what they believe, what they want to do.
That is absolutely true, and thank you for that segue. Yes, there's a phenomenal resource that the League of Women Voters has put together, and it's called Vote 411, and you can access that resource at vote411.org. And just like you said, you can accomplish simple things like checking your voter registration. You can request your absentee ballot. You can look at your polling location, which red flag is subject to change. So definitely want to stay cognizant of where your polling locations are. And you can look up your candidates, which is critically important. I mean, we are in a high information age right now. We have so much information available at our fingertips. Sometimes it can seem overwhelming. And by going to somewhere like vote411.org, you can read about your candidates in their own words, because we reach out to the candidates, we ask them to submit information, and we are not allowed to edit, touch, alter their information at all. So you are literally hearing their words as they present themselves. We list all of the issues that pertain to your zip code, so you know exactly what's going to be on the ballot. You have the backstory. You know all the players. And then you can dig a little deeper. You can go to the Secretary of State's site. It'll take you to Secretary LaRosa's site, where you can, take an even deeper dive, looking at, what those different representatives and senators have done as far as historical elections. It's a very powerful tool, and it's free, and information, and it's nonpartisan. So in this very partisan world, it is nonpartisan information, which is very, very important. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I want to reinforce us being nonpartisan. And, one of the things that voters, whether they want to vote or are feeling, disenfranchised right now, is we really want to get across that the League is not trying to push a political party, a political candidate, a political agenda. We want the red, the blue, the purple, the green, the yellow. We want every color going to the ballot box. We support what your decision is. We just want to give you the information to be an informed voter when you do go to the ballot box, even if that ballot box is a mailbox or a drop box, or actually walking into a polling location and using that box. We just want everyone to go exercise their constitutional right to vote.
Okay, well, sounds good. So would you address the impact of voting within traditionally low propensity marginalized communities? Low propensity meaning people who are unlikely to vote. So a group of people within a community being unlikely to vote in a given election. Would you address that impact?
Yeah, this is something that that is very personal to me. There's a lot of work right now going on nationally, state and locally within the League of Women Voters to really address diversity, equity, and inclusion issues across the board, even outside of the League. We're really taking a firm stand on charging all agencies, all household, all communities to really address these systemic and institutional issues. And looking at these low propensity voters, and, low propensity voters for several different reasons traditionally are in these traditionally marginalized communities. Low propensity not always meaning I don't want to vote. Low propensity can mean I have barriers to being able to vote. So that means I have a low propensity for voting, and being able to address, what these barriers are. Is it, you're a low information voter, not low intelligence. There's a difference between low information and low intelligence. Do you not know enough about how to vote? Do you not know enough about the issues to compel you to vote? Or, are there physical barriers? Are you a disabled voter? Are you a voter with disabilities, whether it's mental or physical? Are there accommodations that can be made to help you vote? Are you in a community of color? Are you a person of color and you feel that there are targeted barriers to you voting? Do you have socioeconomic challenges? Do you have transportation issues? Do you have financial issues? Where your
care. I mean, there are so many things, not even having care for your child, and you can't, there's just, it goes on and on.
Right. And what we're trying to do is really get into these communities and provide voter education to teach these communities, low propensity communities, how to vote, what a civics lesson, really, if you will. And then the 3 options for voting, because many communities don't even realize that there are 3 options for voting and that there can be accommodations made for you to access whichever option you choose. And then discussing, why it's important for you to get, to the ballot box. I mean, we're talking about, walking back to why you'd want to vote for your local representatives. When we're talking about equitable and inclusive practices, access to health care, developing some robust education policies in your communities, non-discriminatory employment practices, looking at addressing, immigration issues, if that's a passion of yours. But all of these things can be addressed with the representatives that you put to represent and advocate for you, in city council, in county council, in the state house, in Congress. So what we want to do is get out to these communities and communicate this and really inspire people to get out to the vote and take control of who is advocating for you. Contact your representatives. Tell them what your issues are. Tell them that you're not happy with what they're doing, or tell them that you absolutely love what you're doing and you're supportive and you want to mobilize your own community to further reinforce what they're doing. But this takes education. This takes advocacy groups, our allied groups, even outside of the leagues. They're doing phenomenal work right now in getting into these low propensity communities, doing drive-through registrations, organizing rides to the polls, even just doing on-site registrations. All of this work is happening. It is a collaborative community effort. And again, it's all to inspire people and empower people to vote.
Have your voice heard.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you don't want someone speaking for you that you do not want speaking for you. Yes, get the information, put the right people in those seats.
Right, that's wonderful. Okay, Aiyanah, I hear that you recently turned 18.
Yes.
And so is this coming election your very first as an eligible voter?
It is, yes.
And what do you think of that? You're getting out there. You're planning to go, and you're going to vote. And how are you maybe convincing or wanting to convince your peers to do the same?
Well, I think we people my age, most of us are born the year 2000 or later, right? So like we were born in the 21st century. And so the perspective that we have on different issues is going to be very, very different than any other age group. We don't remember life without the internet. When it comes to things like gun control, we're the ones who grew up with active shooter drills every day and like it not even phasing us because it's something we're used to. We've learned about climate change I don't remember, like you learn about it from kindergarten on. Like a lot of these issues that that are going to be big topics now are things we've grown up with. So I think like I would tell my peers, you have an opinion that a lot of other people that do normally vote don't have. And especially me, I was entering high school during the 2016 election. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people that I know that kind of we're in that same boat where we couldn't vote yet, but we were definitely old enough to understand what was going on. And a lot of us felt frustrated, no matter what party we were in. We just felt frustrated because we couldn't vote. And now it's 2020. There's a lot of stuff that's happened. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We've all got opinions because there's a lot of stuff that's just happened. And so I would tell the people that my age group that like we can do something about it now. Mm-hmm. Like we are now old enough to vote. We can show up and make sure that the people that we want in charge are put there.
That's wonderful. So are you actually, maybe I should back up. The demographic that you're in is important because of this perspective that you have, this unique perspective that no other voters have. And are you actually actively encouraging young eligible voters to vote?
Yeah, I think yes. I think if you have the right to vote, like my mom was saying, like not every country gets that right. And the fact that we do have that right. And my generation has grown up with things like social media and other platforms where we can talk about what we want. And we've been encouraged to share things about ourselves, even to the point where it's a detriment. And this is one of those opportunities that people beyond us have had. And now we too have that opportunity to make our voices heard. Yeah.
That's great. So how so? Do you get out on social media to encourage your friends and schoolmates to vote, or how do you go about encouraging them?
Well, I think social media is a huge platform for people my age. There's different social media platforms where you look and there's different programs where you can like swipe up on something and you can register to vote right then and there. There are different posts that people like share a lot that are just encouraging people to vote. So I think if you want to reach people my age, social media is going to be the easiest way to do it because so many of us are on Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Not so much Facebook anymore, huh?
No.
Yeah. It's an older form. The boomers are all on that. That's just funny. Is there anything else you want to mention? For instance, when you were in high school, did you learn enough about voting, do you think?
Honestly, no. I took AP government, so that's like the advanced placement, like college level government class. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned it. I was told how to register to vote. And I think we might have walked through it at some point, but we walked through it. It was because we asked and not because it was a part of the curriculum.
Wow.
So I didn't know a lot. We learned kind of how, because AP government kind of focused on like how the machine ran, less how we're involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like how the citizen is involved as opposed to what everybody else is doing within the government. So I think there isn't a lot of education going on talking about how to vote and how you can be involved in voting and like why it's so important. We just get told that we should, but we never really get told why.
Right. And it doesn't really relate to me. I mean, if you don't understand the importance of it, it just, why bother? Why go through the hoops to do it?
Yeah.
How about you, Cynthia? Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
Well, I just wanted to hit on what you and Aiyanah were just speaking about as far as Aiyanah and her peers, I'm assuming, not understanding the actual mechanics of voting. And I'll tell you quickly how that story even came about. We were discussing this podcast and talking about how Aiyanah, how some of her friends, if they weren't able to vote on November 3rd, then they wouldn't be able to vote. We were talking about why November 3rd, why that is the election day and how it is very outdated. And now people that can't make it off work for whatever reason, can't get to the polls that day, they won't have access to the vote. And I said, no, Aiyanah, that's not true. We have early voting, we have mail-in voting. And then she says, oh, really? And I said, Aiyanah, what do you mean, oh, really? How can you be my daughter from the League of Women Voters and not do that? That is my fault. And I honestly assumed that this was being taught in school. I thought anything I would be telling Aiyanah about this would be, I know, Mom, I know, because that happens a lot. Aiyanah does a lot of teaching me at this point. But I was really surprised by that. And then that got me thinking about her peers and how many other graduating seniors do not know that you can vote before November 3rd. And even outside of Hudson, these other school districts, how many kids know that they can mail in their ballot, that they can vote an entire month before the elections actually happen, that you can work voting into your schedule.
Right.
So that had me very concerned.
Yes, for sure. So you're not stuck on one date anymore, and that's a really fine thing to be flexible with it. And it gives you, except you have to make sure you're registered. That's a super important thing. And that's, again, you can go on the Secretary of State's website or vote 411.org, and that takes you to the Secretary of State's office if you click on and to see if you're on the rolls or not.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and just to hit the hard deadlines, because those are important. You do have until October 5th to register to vote. And you do want to absolutely right now, do not wait. Do not follow the Secretary of State's deadlines. He will even tell you himself, do not follow my deadlines because they are not realistic. He is encouraging, the post office is encouraging everyone to get ahead of the deadlines. Do it now, do it now, do it now. Flatten the election curve. Register to vote right now. Request your absentee ballot right now if you're choosing to vote absentee, and make that election plan. If you do plan on going to the polls, figure out what that's going to look like logistically. Figure out what that will look like for your entire family, because there's no telling where we're going to be come November, COVID-19 wise. So maybe, waiting until you get to the polls, that may not be a good idea. Maybe you want to request your absentee ballot instead. You always want to have a plan A through ZZZ as far as the elections go, because again, you want to get that ballot in. You don't want to leave anything to chance. And I fully support anyone wanting to go into a physical polling location. And I'm very sad Aiyanah can't do that. There's something incredibly exhilarating and empowering just being in a room full of civic-minded people, getting that tiny little sticker. That is the proudest sticker I've ever worn. Every election, it's wonderful, and I love it. And I was so excited to take Aiyanah in there to do that. But you can have a proud moment, at the mailbox, at the drop box, wherever that will be. But yes, do it now. Do it now. Make your plan. Get your stamps if you're going to mail it in. Don't leave anything to chance right now. COVID-19 does not care what your plans are. She will get in there and interrupt it.
Yeah, which is too bad, but it's true. And we just have to make it a priority.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, Cynthia and Aiyanah, thanks very much for being here today to talk about voting. Voting truly is a privilege, and I appreciate both of you speaking so passionately and eloquently about it. So thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
I'm Kate Thomas, and this is At Home Radio. Until next time, please get empowered, please vote.